Okay, hello YouTubers. This is Earl Grey. I want to show you my comic book collection in sort of a displacement activity. It's actually Christmas time and I have to do really other things, but doing a YouTube video. But anyway, here I go. This is my man cave, as Sleepy Reader would say, with not just with comic books, but also with many CDs and old magazines and stuff. But let's talk about the comic books. I have very different genres, languages, sort of things, many superhero books, but also a good amount of indie titles. In this box there are my single floppies. There are some older ones, like the Schwermetall magazine you see, and yeah, I don't have much of floppies. I usually buy my books in trades. The bigger the better, and you see three ordinary examples of them on the right side: The Adventures of Jodelle, Building Stories from Chris Ware, and Darwin Cook's most excellent Parker Martini edition. Each of them would be worth more than just one video because they are excellent. Art Spiegelman's breakdown in the back too. But today just a quick overview, and so we go on to the Robert Crump part of my collection. They are sketchbooks published by the German Publish Company 2001. Sadly enough, I just have one of them bound, the rest of them in trade paperback, but it's fine, and it's craziness and crumbiness really shines through in these sketches, which I like a lot. Although and to his comics, most of them in German, some of them in English, and there are some underground books who are very close to my heart in this shelf too. Wonder Warthog and the Freak Brothers from Gilbert Shelton in particular. Maybe I show them this book, which is Love to Death, as you can see in this picture. I guess it would be worth a video too. So, moving further to the next shelf, we have some more recent underground books and art books, some recommended by the great Comic Crack, the Mark Bell's ones, and the Koyama Press ones by Michael DeForge and John Vermiglia, and so on, and the No Bro books from England. Yeah, and even some floppies from German artists I almost forgot. And the best of Milligan and McCarthy. Moving on to some more ancient stuff, the archive editions from DC, Action Heroes, All-Star Comics, Challengers of the Unknown from Kirby, Black Canary, the Doom Patrol, which I have bought mostly because of the Grant Morrison version, and I wanted to dig a little more deeper in the history of these hero team, dysfunctional hero team, as you might say, and 7 Soldiers of Victory. These archive editions are very expensive usually. I bought them all for discount prices. I didn't paid anything for the 7 Soldiers of Victory. They were given to me as a bonus from my comic book retailer, cheapcomics.com, a Dutch comic retailer, which I can't highly recommend enough. Very decent guy, as he came over, and good prices and good offers anytime, and good. Moving on to some things in the same vein, the old Batman books in trade paperbacks, the old goofy ones, and then the Batman Nightfall arc, and with some Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey. This is the Gail Simone version of Birds of Prey. I don't like the new 52 version too much. Speaking of Gail Simone, there are the Batgirl books, which are mostly awesome, art-wise not always strong, and quite the opposite, the Batwoman books, which are art-wise excellent, story-wise not so much. Next shelf. There's some awesome stuff from Brian Azzarello's Joker, The New Frontier from Darwin Cook, The Absolute Batman with The Long Halloween from Loeb and Sale, and Black Mirror from Snyder, and so on, and my books from Grant Morrison, JLA, 7 Soldiers of Victory, and the whole arc he did with Batman, which recently ended with Batman Incorporated 2 or 3. Depends on how you count it. And there's Animal Man, Doom Patrol, and The Invisibles, and all the other graphic novels he wrote and which are always mind expanding and interesting, and twists, and are nearly as always great. Okay, moving on. The New 52 Batman by Snyder and Craig Capullo. I do like them a lot. Same could be said about The Green Arrow by Andy Diggle and Jock. The TV show was the reason for me to pick them up. I wasn't too interested in investing in another hero besides Batman, and Green Arrow seems always like the copy of Batman, which in part is true, but there are enough differences that I think I get more Green Arrow in the near future. The horror book you can see lying there is an anthology, recent published anthology about old horror comics. Very nice, all very colorful book with the old covers from gruesome, gritty, wow, don't know, horror comics. Okay, here are some very interesting books. I want to highlight the Jeff Lemire books, Essex County and Sweet Tooth and Underwater Welder and The Nobody. Great. And The Mind Management by Lemire's buddy Matt Kindt. Then there are some other black and white and undergroundy books. Art Spiegelman's Maus, German edition, and Chester Brown's Fuck, and Ed the Happy Clown, all-time favorite of mine. Ted McGeever's Mondo and Miniature Jesus, nice books. Okay, next shelf. Some kind of hidden in the far left. There is Black Kiss. Okay, I guess a book you should have, but it seemed a bit aged nowadays. Then we have Northlanders by Brian Wood and different artists, always a good read. Crazy Stuff by Hickman, The Manhattan Projects, and East of West. Planet of the Apes, the merchandise, licensed comics. And if you liked the old movies and recent, how do you say, the Revolution, new Planet of the Apes movie. If you like these ones, you certainly like these comics, which are the only ones I have from Boom Studios. And then there's Saga, of course, and Prophet, and Transmetropolitan, all of which comics everybody should have, I think. Then Hellblazer and One Trick Rip-Off by Paul Pope. Moving further to some noir books. Crime, and criminal books by Brubaker, Sean Phillips, and all of them are so awesome behind words, especially when you're not so good with the English language as you might hear as I am, but I could rave for hours about these books you see on this picture. Gotham Central, great. The Shadow, the Black Beetle is art-wise a feast for the eye. Hawkeye, the deluxe edition is sublime, and Going on. What? The Queen and Country, the Omnipress Definitive Edition, and Cowboy Ninja Vikings by Lieberman and Rossmo. Lieberman and Rossmo is quite a trip. Same could be said about each of the books shown here. Yeah, some German comics by German authors, underground or not so underground. Panik Elektro was a German anthology by different German underground artists. German comic artists always have the problem that there's not so big, the audience is not so big, and you cannot sell so much books of your stuff, and you can't make any money on that. It's more a hobby, or you manage it to get an English publisher who translates your things, as I think Marvel has accomplished it with one or two of his books. And okay, moving over to Swamp Thing, Animal Man, Frankenstein, New 52 stuff, all of that. OMAC, and I bought Jack Kirby's OMAC trade paperback to get a better feel for the history of this character. And then I have a long run of Wonder Woman, starting with the Chronicles, moving over to the stylish Wonder Woman of the 60s, and so on. Wonder Woman through the centuries to the recent Wonder Woman by Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang. And the latter are gorgeous. Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang's Wonder Woman are the books that brought me to this character, actually. And as you can see, I did my job by digging into the past, and it's all the fault of Brian Azzarello and his artists. I always have a fable for Greek mythology, and this is the point where Brian Azzarello took me, and great. Starman Omnibus by Mr. Robinson is a must-have, I should say, especially in these great bound editions, which are out of print in the meantime, I believe. But if you can find them for a decent price, grab them without a second thinking. Then there are the Walking Dead omnibus editions, and some more horror stuff, Revival, Hack Slash, Richard Corbin, and the Mike Mignola editions with different artists and by himself. Baltimore, BPRD, Hellboy. Okay, that are maybe the most beautiful comic books in the world today, in the past times, in the future. No, hopefully not in the future. There are always better books to come, but great beyond words. Okay, some more books great beyond words are still to come. Absolute Watchmen edition. I have the German one, which helps sometimes if I don't get the whole double meaning of some text. And the Before Watchmen books, there are some very good and some not so good. I bought them partially for the sake of completeness. This is certainly right for the Ozymandias Crimson Corsair one, and which is not so important. Minutemen, Silk Spectre, Comedian and Rorschach are great. Okay. Batman, The Killing Joke, I put there because this is more sorted by authors. Alan Moore, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and Top 10, and Die leisen Tode des Timothy Hole. I don't know the English title. It's also written by Moore, and there's a book by a tiny, mind-blowing book by Frank Miller there, Hard-Boiled, drawn by Geoff Darrow, of recent some Shaolin samurai fame. I'm quite curious to see this book. And there's an anthology of the best American books picked up by Neil Gaiman, which was the reason I bought this book. Then, because here's my Neil Gaiman part of the collection, the absolute editions of Sandman and the German books, which I bought first, and then I decided that this book is so good and so important, I do have to get the original English ones in the best version I can get. And that were the absolute editions. Okay, going one shelf under, down in the underground, with Daniel Close, Adrian Tomini, the Hernandez brothers. It's Julio Doucet too. It's a collection of awesomeness, I do have to say, and I can't do this book's justice with one or two words, and so I keep silent and go on to the Charles Burns books, Bill Griffith, and awesome too. And to say awesome is such an understating. That's pure art, which stands in this shelf, and mind expanding stuff. Maybe the Gilbert Hernandez books are some kind of flawed trash in comparison, but I like them too a lot. And Madman by Michael Allred, and it's quite random ending of the shelf here with Fear Agent by Volume 1. Volume 2 comes out next year. And D.B. Cooper, another strange sci-fi story. And Will Eisner's Zum Herzen des Sturms. I don't know how the English title is, maybe To the Heart of the Storm. Okay. And some French comics here in German, because my French is worse than my English. Hard to believe, but true. And Jacques Tardy, great French comic artist who did crime, noirish style books, some driven by history themes, some by pure goofiness, like his Adile stories, which have a history theme too, but at first are kind of crazy, and I like him a lot. And if I start, I wouldn't be finished in 2 hours, and that can't be. So let's go to the rest of the shelf, which is a mixture of Italian, Spanish books, some Manara, some Gomez, some Basilero, some Prado, some Herman, Christine Bilal, also Enki Bilal, all great comic artists. And some Belgian, French artists in this shelf. I don't go into detail. Some of them, most of them, maybe not all of them, are in German. Möbius, Barbarella, the architect artists with their world of strange buildings and even more strange stories. The Schuiten brothers and their universe were once my favorite, nowadays not so much, but who's interested in a strange sci-fi setting with a strong point in a strong interest in architectural development and so on. I don't do them justice right now, but you surely have to give them a look. I don't know if there are any English editions out. And moving down, there are more comics I bought many times before, many years before. There are some really old stuff, and down there is the Entenhausen section. It's Duckburg in English, Donald Duck and the Karl Barks stories. and I have Asterix too, and Lucky Luke, and these are the books. I think in Germany and Europe, you start with comics, not so much the superhero vein, which maybe is the reason why I'm not so keen on superheroes until today. Although I dig the Grant Morrison run, obviously, a lot, and many other books, but it's not like in the States where everybody seems to know Batman, Superman, Green Arrow, and all the Marvel heroes, but never have heard of Asterix or Lucky Luke or so. And Asterix and Lucky Luke, which I have always, they are on the right side on this shelf, which I have forgot to photograph. Asterix and Lucky Luke, they are the absolute comic stars here, and frustrating enough for the most of my friends, and so comic knowledge ends with Asterix and Lucky Luke and Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse. Okay, thank you for listening to my not so short video, and I hope you could understand me. It was an experiment for me to do this in English and not in German, but I must say that the German community about comic books on YouTube is very, very small, and I do like the English comic book channels a lot more. Comic Crack, Sleepy Reader, Xanadu Comics, Dale and Dan, and Matt on Comics, and so on and so on, Comic Book Mom, and whatever. And I tried it in English, and I plan to do something more in the future. Again, thank you for listening. Goodbye.